Welcome to the AQA YouTube channel. To navigate through the video, you can select specific chapters or subjects of the video. Enjoy watching and remember to subscribe.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're here to listen to and watch Gerard Jarvis's presentation of Traralgon and Gippsland and surrounding towns. So it's going to be a bit of a road trip. Yes, it'll be really good to see this and get a bit of an understanding of this side of Victoria. So, Gerard, would you like to start? I'm just going to spotlight. Yes, you do. I'm going to spotlight you now so everyone can see your screen, and then you can just share your screen for everybody when you're ready. Thank you.
Okay. You can see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Of course, when I was asked to do this, I wasn't really sure of how to approach it. So as we go along, and it's not working, oh, here we go. As we go along, you'll just see what I've tried to do, I guess, and these are just a few points I've listed on the front page of what I thought about, like it's my journey around Traralgon. I was hoping that for many of you, if you come down this way, you'll think about going to some of these places. I know we all have different abilities, and I've tried to think of it from different abilities as we go along. Some places I've checked into and they've responded back to me, and if they're accessible, others I have not heard back from. So we'll just hope and see that everything goes okay, and for some reason it's not working. Here we go. For Gippsland itself, it's quite large in its own presentation, but I thought I'd give a little bit of history tour first. We have Macmillan, Angus Macmillan, who did his first tour of Gippsland in about 1839. That was followed up reasonably quickly by Paul Strzelecki. Now, Paul Strzelecki was out looking for gold and other minerals and what he could find, remembering that a lot of Gippsland was heavily timbered and it was quite difficult to move around. Gippsland received its name purely from Paul Strzelecki naming it after Governor Gibbs in New South Wales, and that's why it turned up with Gippsland. So the section that I'm going to concentrate on is this section in here. I'm not going to do all of Gippsland. I'm hoping that others will come along and do their section. Someone up Warrigal Way, someone further up Bensdale Way will pick up and do a little bit of their views on Gippsland. But to start, I thought I'd just run a little bit of trivia on what is really happening, right? Why building Gippsland? It started off with a few small gold rushes down Foster Way and further up Bensdale Way, but they petered out very, very quickly. Land was cleared for farming, and we know that the farming now is, especially milk industry, supplies a lot of Melbourne. So we needed the brown coal. A lot of the started with brown coal for briquettes because of the shortage of briquettes in Melbourne. So they had to start finding their own, and they started looking at the brown coal around your lawn. And of course, now we know for the offshore oil and natural gas that's around. But, and there's always a big but. So I've also tried not to let my humour get too much mixed up with this. But anyway, if you want to catch a big fish, what's the one thing you need? I don't know how many of you are fishermen, but if you want to catch a big fish, you need a big worm, right? So, and we all know about the Gippsland giant earthworm, right? It's about 1 metre in length, 2 centimetres in diameter, and it can go up to 3 metres.
The giant Gippsland earthworm is one of the largest earthworms native in Australia. These giant earthworms average at 1 meter long and 2 centimeters in diameter and can reach 3 meters in length. It is difficult to measure length as the worms will stretch, so scientists use weight to estimate the size. The average weight of an adult worm is about 200 grams. They have a dark purple head and a blue-gray body, and about 300 to 400 body segments. These worms are found in the Bass River Valley of South Gippsland in Victoria, Australia. This species spends most of its life within the top 1.5 meters of soil, feeding on roots and soil organic matter. The baby earthworm takes 5 years to reach its mature adult size and can live for 10 years or more altogether. The giant Gippsland worm is currently listed as a protected species, and its population has been reduced by introduction of agriculture into region of Australia.
Yeah, so I don't know how many of you are fishermen, but if you want to catch a big fish, just come down Gippsland Way, dig yourself up a worm. Right? I know most of us have watched the news lately, and to me, a death of an icon. I'm not sure how many have travelled down to Latrobe Valley. If you crest the hills at Haunted Hills and you look down into the valley, you used to be able to see the Hazelwood smokestacks. And that was the first thing you really noticed about Gippsland, was Hazelwood itself. Of course, Hazelwood, a bit of a sad story. It was well past its due date of retirement. All the workers there would tell you that it should have been pulled down over 40 years ago, with what's there. It had about 900 staff in total working here at one time. It was the biggest employer around Latrobe Valley. And now, of course, that's gone. So industry's suffering a little bit in Latrobe Valley. Out the back now, you can see coal, the mine, and it closed in 2017. Oops. Ah, bugger, missed it one up. Anyway, I was going to say that they had a pondage. The sad thing about the pondage was about 12 months before they closed the power station, they filled it with barramundi in an expectation that it would entice a lot of tourists to come down and fish for barramundi. The water was warm, it suited the barramundi, and they were just starting to fish it when they decided to close Hazelwood. Of course, once they closed Hazelwood, the water went cold and the fish did not last. The pondage itself now is basically, they've banned anyone from using the pondage. It used to be good for sailing, had a caravan park, but now it's a no-go zone because they basically say the dam wall itself is going to collapse, which most of us look at and it's not. It's just they didn't want to take any responsibility for the pondage itself. So this is the last segment of Hazelwood.
Ready to go. The 18-storey boiler house one was the last remaining major building at Hazelwood. 20,000 tonnes of steel frame floored. Remnants of the former power station now twisted metal. The demolition of the building had been stalled due to weather, but 5 months of preparation eventually put into action. It went exactly as planned. Following the demolition of 8 chimneys and 3 other boiler houses, this was the last blast at Hazelwood, once one of the state's most crucial assets, now bound for recycling.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Hazelwood is no longer. And I often think about the building of the power stations, where it started. And if it wasn't for, these men actually sharing their dreams, we wouldn't really have the industries that we have today. And I find it amazing that looking at some of these, it was all done by hand. How the power station started, the hardships that they put up with. If we had to do that today, how many people would actually go out there and actually put their backs into building the country. And this is just like at your lawn, building your lawn power station. It started in 1921, owned by the SCC. And most people in the valley thought the SCC was a great employer. It was a bit like working for the Dole scheme. A lot of people went through high school, not really with much ambition, because they say, I'm just going to get a job with the SCC. Their grandparents were there, their fathers were there, and they were just going to keep going. But now, once the SCC closed, a lot of them have a lot more trouble getting employment, especially down this way. And just how they picked a patch of land to build the power stations, and how they lived whilst they were building them. No luxuries, just makeshift shacks, and life was, they were happy to work. And we know that there's only one unit at your line still operational. And if that one closes, our base load of power will be even a bit harder to sustain. And of course, they had to make sure the railways were built first, even to get the briquettes and the coal out of here to Melbourne. So there was a lot happening in the valley. I hope you like looking at old photographs. I guess now we start the good fun. Now we start the fun part. I was a little bit thinking about how I could approach this a bit differently. And I thought the best way I could do it is some like road trips, starting from Traralgon, where I would go for a road trip. Keep in mind, and I've always kept in mind, as I said earlier, our different abilities and what we can do and can't do. I made the assumption that often if we go on a road trip, we'll go with family or friends, and they might also like to have certain experiences as well. So the first road trip was to the best fish and chips ever. And many would argue that if you live in Traralgon, nothing much to do on a Saturday or Sunday, you drive down to Port Albert for the fish and chips. It's a nice drive, and the fish and chips are pretty good. As you can see, it's only about an hour away, and it is really quite a lovely drive. But first off, we'll stop at Yarram on the way for a project that they've introduced, which might overtake the silo tour. There's a lot of taking in Victoria.
My name is Hasnan Hudetpater. I was born and raised in Mongolia, and I moved to Australia in '99. Since I moved to Australia, that I started looking into like Canadian street art a bit more and into art school in Sydney. It's only when I moved to Melbourne in 2010 that I started painting walls and haven't looked back to it.
Known genius, because Hitchcock can put his hand to anything from real grunge tag type images through to a photorealistic image. But the thing that struck me was his ability to translate a postage size stamp image up to a two-story building. I've been painting all my life, and you know, I understand the grid way of doing things as they used to do in the 15th century Italian Renaissance. But this
Oh,
may
he's
be-
talking about the
in this
silos.
there's this huge image
Just
up on
like paint, you can see them paint how they're doing it.
Was a bit of an artist.
Yeah.
I grew up
Oh, look at it here.
paint and draw and this and that. He did give me like a couple of lessons here and there, just
Yeah.
anatomy or like how to do the proportions of the face and stuff like that. But apart from that, like I'm mostly self-taught. Like this day and age, there's so much resource online. Just have to practice and paint like pretty much every day.
This particular project started when Gerard Greenaway, who's the local Yarram identity, came into our bar one night and thought, I love this work that you've had Hisco come down and put on the bar. What would happen if we got 10 of these done around town and we actually attracted a whole lot of people to come to Yarram and called it Hisco Town?
It's definitely interesting to be in Yarram because it's one of the biggest projects I've taken on. It's incredibly like progressive for a town to turn into like street art. Silos are just like one big thing that people can look at, whereas it's a whole town with lots of things. To be able to do it as a one artist thing, it's like really unique.
I talked about putting one of the coffee palaces at the start of the town. Now I thought I'd love to have Gary Player, who's one of the real heroes of golf, who come and played here in 1956. And we had a beautiful photo of him. So I thought that'd be lovely to have that up on the wall at the golf club. Ralph Vale, he became quite famous in Yarram for a Tara Festival every year, having his bullock team here. This area was originally developed with bullock teams. Port Albert was the biggest port in Victoria at one stage.
We're going to put QR codes on every building, and those codes will take people back to a web page that will then give the backstories of all the things behind each image and why it's there, and also lead them.
Got to match all the colours.
This is just a.
You got to match all the colours.
And all the other attractions of living here in this fabulous part.
Of course, we've got the Cara, the first female national park ranger, who was very famous in the early days.
The bakery wall with Lynn, who's a Vietnamese refugee who moved here like in the 70s and just said he wants to say thank you to Australia for taking him in and his family, which is something I can really relate to myself, being a migrant and being here.
It has highlighted a lot of our history and the historical people, and it was the wall owners themselves that really decided what was on each wall.
Me and Jody wanted a bar scene. The mural itself is situated within the motel where you can see it from the road. It's a bar scene with a Mongolian queen, pirates and some skeletons, and then there's things for kids to look and find. There's also another one out front. Street art now brought into the country, it gives kids an opportunity to see what can be done.
Then just out of Yarram, the Alberton pub, they wanted something very simple because it's an historic building, it's a beautiful old building, and they just wanted an image of horse and carts and the way beer in barrels was delivered back in the day.
I really enjoy working in rural communities because people like really show appreciation for this type of art. In the city, like I've painted countless walls in around Melbourne and Sydney, and there's so much art there already that it's not as special. Whereas in smaller towns, I can see how it changes the local dynamics and local community being affected by the presence of this artwork. And, to me, that's the reward for this work.
Ultimately, we want more people to come to Yarram. From the hundreds or thousands of people who are following this project on Facebook, it must have a big impact. This will become part of a tourist trail, and I think this adds to the Tarra Valleys and the Wilson's Promontories, the Long Pier, Agnes Falls, Port Albert, and the murals. So I think it will help all of South Gippsland to become a tourist destination, not just Yarram.
I haven't actually seen the murals yet, but I know that one day I'll have to venture down now that we can actually escape a little bit more out of home to see what's there. But before we leave Yarram, I just wanted to say there is an alternative way to Yarram from from Traralgon. Now this way is a little bit longer. Doesn't look it, but it is, because it's a lot more picturesque. So you don't drive as fast, and there's a fair bit to see along the way.
Now we're going to go for a fairly short walk today. It's only about,
Okay.
but it takes us through some of the best of what Trafalgar has to offer. The original old growth forest,
Need to get used to stuff.
giant old mountain ash trees, and some of the ancient myrtle beech trees that get down into the rainforest. So we're going to see the two main types of forest that are found here in Trafalgar, the wet sclerophyll forest and the cool temperate rainforest. Let's go and see what's out there in the park. So we're standing next to one of the mountain ash trees, which are the main eucalypt species found here in Trafalgar National Park. Mountain ash trees are the tallest flowering plants in the world and the tallest hardwood trees in the world. They can grow to heights of over 100 metres tall, but the tallest here in Trafalgar are probably about 80 metres tall. And a tree like this would be well over 300 years old, maybe even up to 500 years. So the suspension bridge that we have here today is actually the second one. The first one was built down a place called Alberton after their main traffic bridge was washed away in a flood. And in order to provide access for people across the river, they put up a suspension bridge. When they had finally rebuilt that bridge and the suspension bridge was pulled down, the Shire engineer at the time, a man named Frank Corrigan, had the idea of bringing a bridge up here to what was then the Bulga National Park and erecting it over one of the gullies. It gives people a fantastic opportunity to look down onto the tree ferns, onto the canopy, and out into the rainforest. So we've walked across the suspension bridge and we've come down onto the Fern Gully track, and we're right down in the cool temperate rainforest now. So now we're standing next to one of the myrtle beech trees, which is the main tree species down here in our cool temperate rainforest. These trees are very slow growing and long lived, and because they're never killed by bushfires, because the bushfires jump over the rainforest gullies, they can reach great ages, and in fact this tree is thought to be over 1,000 years old.
I don't know if many of you have been this way, and it is a very picturesque way to go. Some of the tracks may not be accessible as others, but especially Trafalgar, if you can make it to the suspension bridge, it is very pretty to look over it. And it's often nice to actually venture out when there's a slight rain, rather than sort of like a hot day. It just gives you a better atmosphere, especially in the rainforest around there. Oops, wrong button.
So we're going to go for
There we go. So there's a lot to see, and as I mentioned, even if you take families, you'll notice the picture on the bottom right, that's steps. And I know national parks are talking about making places a lot more accessible for everybody. And I hope that they will go into Trafalgar and fix up and take out a few of the steps, because there are some lovely walks through that area. Just be careful in winter. It does snow, although it's not very high. It does get a good dusting of snow, but there are some lovely picnic areas and lovely places for the family just to sit around, listen to the birds, and take in the whole atmosphere of what's there. So we'll continue our road trip to the best fish and chips ever. Oops, wrong button again. My fingers are too big. And we're off to Port Albert, and we'll finally get there.
While Port Albert today is a quiet coastal hamlet, it started life as a thriving port. And Maritime Museum volunteer Bill Black sure knows his history.
It came into being as the third major port for Victoria. There was Portland first, then Melbourne in 1837, and Port Albert came into being in 1841 to service the whole of Gippsland.
Now, can you tell me about some of the famous shipwrecks?
The most famous shipwreck was the Clonmel, which was wrecked here on the 2nd of February 1841. It's the oldest located paddle steamer wreck in Australia, second voyage from Sydney to Melbourne.
I heard everyone survived.
Everyone survived. A 63 epic trip in a boat, not much bigger than the one we're sitting in. 2 ships were sent up here and everybody was duly rescued.
The Gippsland Regional Maritime Museum is housed in the old Bank of Victoria.
Oops.
Last stop on this whirlwind tour of Port Albert.
Hey, we made it.
Fish and chips down on the wharf. You know, I'll have a piece of fish, some chips and a couple of potato cakes. Thanks, Brookie.
Very impressed. They say it's the best in Victoria. It would have to go close. It has to go close to being the best in the country.
I'll stop it there for the moment because you would have heard him mention it was the 3rd biggest port in Victoria. Just remember that for a lot of the settlers, a lot of the steam engines, a lot of the heavy equipment came by boat. And if you look into the background, that's just the Strzelecki Ranges. So bullock teams would have to take heavy boilers, a lot of steel from Port Albert across those ranges, then into the Latrobe Valley. And as later on we'll look at Walhalla, even further into Walhalla, because trains and that weren't really around at the time. So it was a lot of effort really to build and colonise down this way. And as you can see, there's not much there. It's quite flat. And I often surprised at how they actually get in there and found the place to start with. Well, as you can see, Port Albert's not very big, but it does have the best fish and chips, and it's well worth the drive. From Port Albert, our next road trip is really just up the coast a little bit further to Port Welshpool. Again, Port Welshpool is still in Corner Inlet, and again, it was like one of the hubs for fishing very early in the piece. This is also where they tried to run the catamaran for Tasmania out of Port Welshpool. Instead of the ferries always out of Melbourne. They had a scheme where they'd have a catamaran for carrying cars to go across Bass Strait to Devonport. The jetty that we're looking at now stretches 800 metres, but it's new, it's been replaced. The old one was in a bad state of disrepair, and of course, it's a great spot for fishing. A lot of people would go around the barriers, risking life and limb just to fish off the jetty. So as a bit of a tourist option, they replaced the jetty. And it is a great place to fish. So if you'd like to catch your own fish and you have some time, it's really a lovely place. A lot of people go out there and set up a bit of a tent stay there all day and just fish. There's a caravan park at the end. They have accessible toilet block, but not cabins, if you're interested. And at the moment, we're nearly on high tide, so it looks nice. On low tide, of course, it looks a little bit different. It's a lovely roll in a wheelchair. This boat here takes out whale watching tours out past Wilson's Prom. Not easy to get into. Hopefully one day I'll fix up access just a little bit more. That's just the far end of Welshpool, Port Welshpool. This will give you just a bit of an idea of the old jetty, the state of disrepair it was in before they replaced it. You can also see in here, jutting out into Corner Inlet, so that it was quite hazardous for boats to actually get in low tide. And a shot of how it used to be with the fishermen offloading their catches throughout. So it was quite a big fishing port. It's reduced a lot lately, of course, just the way the world goes. From Port Welshpool, the third major road trip is one that I think everyone should do if you have not done so already, and that's the Wilson's Prom. Some of you may have seen this clip. I'm not sure if you have. But it really explains how they're really trying to make things accessible.
Destinations, and it's not hard to see why. Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm here with Rocker and Shauna at Wilson's Promontory National Park. If you have a reduced mobility and you enjoy getting outdoors, you're going to love this place. I can't wait to show you around. Puddle River Campgrounds is 230 kilometres southeast of Melbourne, and it's part of the 50,000 hectare Wilson's Promontory National Park, managed by Parks Victoria. Before we start to explore, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this is filmed and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. The accessibility at Tidal River has been very well thought out, and it's in continual development. Norman Beach is close to the campgrounds, and you can venture there with the available beach wheelchairs. The nearby Lewern Walk is step-free, and it runs along the picturesque Tidal River. There's accessible toilets and barbecues, and most paths at the campground are a compacted gravel. For those who want to stay overnight and who wouldn't, there's a number of options. One accessible unit and 2 accessible cabins are available. The visitor centre is the place to borrow equipment for your stay. You can arrange and pick up items like the electric hoist, a commode chair, and if you want to head to the beach like us, you can even borrow one of the beach wheelchairs. Here too, you can arrange to hire the all-terrain trail rider wheelchair. All of the equipment here is free to hire, so it's recommended you book ahead. The 2 accessible cabins each have a self-contained kitchen, 2 separate bedrooms, and a bathroom with a rolled-in shower. They each sleep up to 6 people. We're staying in a domain unit. It's the newest addition here, and it's built in line with the current accessibility standards. The contemporary unit has a good-sized living area and opens up to a wide deck with tables and chairs. The modern double bedroom has an adjustable bed, the bathroom has a roll-in shower, and there's a well-appointed accessible kitchen. It really has all the creature comforts of a city apartment, set far away from the noise and the traffic in this tranquil national park. Settling in, sitting on the deck and listening to the birds, we had a visit from a wallaby. Now, we can't guarantee that you'll get a close-up experience like this, but definitely keep an eye out for some of the local native animals. In the late afternoon, we ventured out to Lewern Track, which is an accessible walk running along the banks of the river. It's made for visitors of all abilities, and the path is flat and reasonably wide. Winding gently through the banksias and the tea trees, it reveals the still river and the nearby mountain, which is coloured by the sunset. Lewern is one of Victoria's original accessible walks, and it's been built and rebuilt after bushfires and flooding, each time with a focus on making it work for visitors with a range of mobility. At the end of the track is a footbridge that provides impossibly perfect views across the calm water. With the silhouettes of the mountains, it's a beautiful way to end our first day at the prom. Norman Beach is about 10 minutes from our unit, and it looks like a postcard. There's pristine sand and clear blue water, and it's watched over by the ever-present Mount Oberon. To get closer to the ocean, a roll across some soft and hard sand awaited us. We borrowed 2 beach wheelchairs, and with a bit of help, we made our way down the boat ramp and onto the sand. You may need to crisscross the river, so check the park's visitor centre for the latest conditions. You might not call this accessible, but it was achievable, and being on the beach was amazing. Tasting the ocean air and hearing the wash of the waves, it's very relaxing, and it's a beautiful way to spend an afternoon in the sun. Up near the Norman Beach car park, we found an accessible barbecue and started preparing lunch. Later, before the drive home, we relaxed with a coffee. There aren't many places like the prom. Here there's the beach and the bush, the river and the mountains, and add to that the great accessible opportunities so you can experience all of this close up. We've had a great time showing you around the prom, and we hope you'll come down and explore it for yourself.
It would be lovely if all national parks and places were this accessible. I know Robert's mentioned about going camping here, and I think that hopefully that'll be one of the places we'll try. We'll head down for a camp. And I've also suggested that, Georgina, your name's mentioned. Funny about that. I don't know if people are into group camping and going places as a group, but being that there's a couple of units there, people might like to get together and share a couple of units. I know I've got my camper that I'm happy to take down and share. I'm not sure about Robert. I think he'd just love to go camping. The only thing I'd really recommend if you're going to Wilson's prom, before you book, try and avoid school holidays. It might make a difference now because everybody doesn't seem to really care about school that much anymore. And also avoid school camps, if there's school camps there. Some of them can be quite good, and other school camps could be a bit out of control. So that'd be my 2 recommendations about going to Wilson's prom. But, you know, I'd be happy to sort of like take Georgina's suggestion if she wants to maybe put something together and organise a few people to go for a bit of a trip and just go down and sit around and chat outdoors in nature, which is something I always enjoy doing. And the social side's always very nice. Of course, if you're not really keen on Wilson's prom, there's a few holiday lodges close by, which are, they say, are accessible, but I'm not sure. They say they're 15 minutes, and this is just a bit of a guide through one of them and what they are like for accessibility. Not sure about the pool, and this one's more of a house. There's no sound, but looking at some of the features, it looks quite good. If you're interested in staying down near the prom, taking the family down, a group of friends. They say they're about 15 minutes from the prom, and there's a fair bit to do around the prom, not just going into the national park. There's a few other beaches, but some of the beaches are not very accessible down that way. So you really need to check what is accessible and what isn't. This place looks quite big and has a fair few rooms and a couple of beds, double beds in them. Again, if you've got a young family, it could be a nice place for them to join. I was sort of impressed with this bathroom. One of the sinks, you should be able to fit a wheelchair under, which is the one closest to this end, and the shower looked reasonable. But again, we all have different abilities, so I'm not sure. But not having hard screens is a good thing to be able to move around.
Wow.
Exactly where on the map, I'm not sure. But it wouldn't be too hard to find, I hope. Sure, with that sound. Yeah. I was only not sure. Just to be a little bit different now, car trip number 4 is purely up to the vehicle collection in Mafra. This is one spot I was trying to organise for the Gippsland group to attend. Unfortunately, COVID stopped us. But this will give you a bit of an idea of what's available.
That houses the Gippsland vehicle collection. We came into being in around 2003 when the Grand Prix rally came through Mafra, and the call was put out for cars to come and line the street. The fellows were just absolutely beside themselves with the numbers of cars that showed up. And at a pub subsequent to that rally, as all good decisions are made, somebody said, wouldn't it be great if we could find a place where we could show these cars on a regular basis? And so the seed was sown. So the next thing was, well, where are we going to show these cars? This building that you're in was built in 1943. It was one of a number of these buildings that were established at that time. As the war or the government became concerned about Australia's safety with the bombing of Darwin and the escalation in our territory, in our area of the war, they put on a lot more troops. And of course, they had to feed the troops. So there are a number of these buildings that were established at that time, which dehydrated vegetables, which ultimately went to feed the troops. There's a lovely photograph on the wall here of the ladies who, there's about 14 that were employed originally, and they sat here and they peeled potatoes and all sorts of things. I had a digger come through one day when I was working here, and we were talking about the story, and he said, the cabbage, he said, it was just awful. He said, the best thing about it was that they used to dry it and then they'd roll it up and smoke it. And that was his fond memories of dehydrated food. We took over the building. We were very fortunate that it was owned then by a company called Murray Goldman, who some of your viewers may have heard of. And they were prepared to let us have it for a peppercorn lease. It had sat vacant for probably the better part of 30, 40 years. Nestles took it over in 1956 and they used it to store a lot of their product. And then they fell into disrepair and they were no longer interested in the property. It passed to Murray Goldman, who used it for a little while for storage, and then, as I said, it just sat vacant. So when we took it over, it was home to every pigeon, rat, mouse, you name it. They all lived here. It took 2 years to get it from its state, to get it to the position that it's now, that it was able to have a display. And we finally opened for our first display in 2004, which was quite a momentous occasion. Since then, we have 3 displays a year now. They're all different themes. So at the beginning of the year, our executive decides on displays for the year. At the moment, the display you have is Lost American Brands. That changes in July to Bygone British Marks. And in the latter part of the year, November, it is Cars That Changed the World. So quite a range there. The cars are lent to us, so we're not, we don't own any cars in our own right, and that enables us to continually change the display. So if you haven't been for 4 months, there's something different for you. We're run by volunteers essentially, which makes us a little bit different to a lot of museums, and we have over 700 members now. So between the memberships and the volunteers, that provides us with sufficient income to continue to run. And in June last year, we were finally able to actually purchase the building. So that was, again, a huge milestone for us because it provides us with stability going forward. Since we opened, we've had over 110,000 visitors, and we average about 10 to 13,000 a year, which is pretty good given we're in a little country town here of 4,500, and we're not on the highway. So people have to actually migrate to come and visit us, but thankfully they do, and we hope that they enjoy what they see. If you're in Melbourne, we're only 2.5 to 3 hours up the highway, depending on whereabouts in Melbourne you live. Great day, great place for a run. If you're in car clubs, we welcome car clubs all the time. Happy to host your club. We've got barbecue facilities, great kitchen facility if you want to have the luncheon inside. And if you're from interstate, come and make yourself known in country Victoria. It's a really good place to be.
My name's Andrew Gallagher, and I'm the project manager of our latest development here at the Car Museum, which I'm very proud of. One of our members 2 years ago offered the club his complete collection of model cars, which is about 3,500 cars. So we said yes, of course we'd love them, and we decided that we would have a suitable building to put them in. We put this facade behind me here, which is constructed of 3 original Mafra garages, the Ford garage, the Holden garage, and what was then the standard garage. 2 of them still exist, and unfortunately the Holden garage. So we built this. It took us 6 weeks to build this building. It has a mezzanine floor. It was a major job. We had something like 45 tradesmen here, many of them providing their time at certainly a cut rate or free. And we had 24 of our members as volunteers that learned how to be painters and carpenters and all sorts of things for this beautiful display. And it's something that we are absolutely proud of, and we're getting so much good feedback from our visitors about this.
Hi, my name's Sporty Moran. I'm a volunteer of the Gippsland Vehicle Collection. I work in conjunction with Andrew Gallagher. We're very proud of our display of model world here in Mafra. As you can see behind me, there's a collection of trucks of all types and double deckers, coaches, you name it, he's collected it. As you move around the room, you'll find models of Holden from the 48215 right through to 1-ton utilities. We had a tremendous time unpacking these. There was 1.5 furniture removal trucks to get them here. They were all boxed, and the gentleman supplied us with bundles of cotton gloves to handle them with. And we had an awesome time unpacking them. It was like Christmas. Look what I've got here. I used to have one of these. I've been a petrol head all my life, and I've been to most Bathursts. I've travelled to every Bathurst and camped on the hill and things like that. And it just brings back tremendous memories. And some of the old vehicles that I had and trashed, I wish I still had them. The value of them would be enormous today, but it's really really brings a lot of pleasure to a lot of people who come through this museum. I retired in 2011. I just live over the road. I spend a lot of time here with Andrew, and it gives us a lot of great pleasure in working together. And
I'd have to say, if you're into car collections, it's pretty amazing. I have seen it, and I thought I had a nice car collection. And I think I missed out on that one. This is a really good car collection for models. The museum itself is very nice, and hopefully when we're back next year, we'll be able to organise a trip to the Mafra Car Museum, which is really good. They do have a newsletter that they put out, and it'll often let you know what's on display. So if you think of coming up yourself, they're quite easy to find, and you can check out the exhibition, and it might suit you, and you could even head up yourself. But that's quite good. Right, got to get rid of this. Now, Georgina, how much time do I have left?
It's 3:30. We could continue. We've got.
You sure?
Yeah, absolutely. We do
Okay.
have. Usually we allocate 2 hours for meetings. Usually they run between 1.5 and 2. So continue. Everything's fine.
Okay. Just don't want you to fall
Sorry,
asleep.
I'll just jump in there for a second. How long were you thinking of going further?
Well, I can stop at any time. There's a few more trips, so I can always save half for next time if you'd like.
Yeah, how much further you got to go? How many more trips?
We're about halfway. So, yeah. So we can do this car museum, keep that together, and then have a think and see if you'd like me to keep going. That's all. I forgot the time. I didn't run the timer, unfortunately. I forgot the
No, that's
timer.
right. It's been really good. But yeah, maybe to just finish off this last little bit, and we'll have an intermission where we can have a bit of a chat.
Yep, that'd be good.
Thank you.
All right. So just to keep the car museums together, this is the one at Trafalgar. If you're into Holdens, which I must admit I was not, but the museum's well worth going to.
I'm standing outside of the Holden Museum here in Trafalgar.
Yeah, so for those who are into Holdens, of course, it is a great museum. And it's surprising what Holden actually did.
Classic restos to our museum. It's a fantastic thing to have you here, and we just love our museum. We've got a remodified old butter factory, and all we've really done to it is give it a good coat of paint and a really good spruce up. We started this some 4 or 5 years ago. Actually, started work 5 years ago on the factory itself to get it ready for our displays, and it's sort of just grown like topsy ever since. We absolutely love it. The place is staffed by volunteers, and every one of them are enthusiasts. And yeah, we just have a ball here. We're a little bit quirky. We like something a bit different, so we've got things like the Lloyd Harpet, which is part of the Holden history. If you go back far enough, Holden were sort of into the saddles, and then they went on to motorbikes, and then they moved on to motor car bodying. Holden in 1928 built 36,000 bodies in the 1 year of 45 or 46 different makes of motor car. So we're talking about not just models, not roadsters and tourers and so on and so on. We're talking about makes of motor car. And that includes the T Model 4 in some of them in the early days. So yes, we've got a variety of stuff here that we just love to look at and play around with and love to talk about. Well, what does the Holden mean to me and to all of our volunteers, I would say? It is just Australian. It is what we are all about. It was we designed it, we built it, we had it. And when you look back on it, I suppose what I love about the Holden is that it was all Australian. You could break down in the middle of the night anywhere in the country, and the local chemist shop would give you something to fix your car and get you going. When you look at the Holdens in the early days, you look at the first that came out, they were talking about a motor car that could sit on 60 mile an hour all day, every day. And even though that doesn't sound a lot when you're looking at 110 kilometre zones, the roads were nothing like they are today. And you would belt along very skinny little tyres, and she would do it all the time, totally reliably. They were a fantastic bit of engineering, and what I love about them was their reliability. There's only two things that can go wrong. One, the spark plug will pack up, which you can replace pretty easily, or you've run out of fuel. And you've got spark and you've got fuel, your Holden will go every time, guaranteed. Holden started as a saddle maker back in 1856. A young chap from England came over here. He'd had a balloon with his stepmother, and he arrived in Australia at the age of about 16. A few years later, he got a small inheritance from his mother's estate and started up a saddlery business. Now, his father was a saddler and a very, very good businessman, and he started up the business, and on it went from there. Now, Holden started tin bashing in about 1900, where they were making sidecars for Golding, who was supplying the sidecars to Harley Davidson. They then went on from there to manufacture their own design, and in about 1915 they bodied their first motor car, which just happened to be a Lancia. When you look at the very early Holden, it was basically a US design, or a GM design, or large input into the design of the very first Holden. When it came to producing it here, it was an all-Australian product with all Australian people employing hundreds and then thousands and then tens of thousands of people. And it goes on, I think, what we've lost. We look at Holland back in the 60s, they had 54% of the new car market. It is just a fantastic thing. And you think of all the people that were employed, and employed because, they say for every one job there's a flow on of another 5 or 6. And if you even conservatively say they were employing 4,000 people, that's 25,000 people nearly that have got a job purely because of Holden. I don't think there is anybody in Australia that hasn't been touched, or any family that hasn't been touched significantly by the Holden brand in one form or another. I'm as proud as could be to represent Holden here today and just have our museum representing everything, and I would welcome anybody and everybody to come and have a look at what we've got here. It will really do the Holden Emu proud. I'll have to look and see what we're doing, and thank you very much.
Okay, well, now it's peanut and popcorn time. Choc tops are in the fridge. Yeah, I'll stop there for the moment, because the next place we go to is one of my favourite places. I spend a lot of time out there, and that was Walhalla. So I'll pause.